Hello, everybody. Rerendim, as I say it in Chukis. That's a language. That's my first language. I want to thank first Heidi and her team for inviting me to be here with you today. You won't learn much from me, but you'll get to know me a little more. But I'm really excited to be here. I've given this presentation a lot in different settings. It does help start the conversation and piques people's interests. So I hope at least it does that for you today. As was mentioned, my name is Joe and I come from Micronesia. Anybody know where Micronesia is? Who knows where Chuk is in Micronesia? Great, that's awesome. Not too many people do know where Micronesia is, but it is kind of north central Pacific. So yes, people say, is it close to Samoa? And I say, okay, yeah, it's close. But Samoa is in the southern hemisphere, we're in the northern hemisphere. We share a huge ocean, so we're kind of neighbors, but we're also very far away from each other. My name is actually Silem. I was born with that name. That was a Western influence from missionaries. Silem comes from Salem or Shalom, so peace. I guess they were wanting me to be a peaceful person. But it was actually the opposite. So the story is my grandfather was a huge boxing fan. And so when I was growing up as a little kid, I would go around and be violent and punch things, right? So I don't know why, it was just boxing stuff. So his favorite boxer was Joe Frazier. Anybody know Joe Frazier? Yeah? Down goes Frazier. Right? So he called me Joe, and Joe just stuck. And so I made it official, because Joe sounds better. And Enlet, my last name, is our family name. It means truth in Chukis. So that's who I am. These are the Micronesian islands. This is Palau, the Rock Islands, one of the most beautiful places on earth. So if you do get a chance to travel, Palau is your place. Those are Yappies in their traditional garb from the island of Yap, one of the states in my country. And then this is Chuk. This is a view from my village, actually. So this is where I grew up, in Chuk. What's my story? I was, born and raised there, grew up to be an adult. And, I grew up on an island that's tiny. You can walk around the entire island in less than 2 hours. The entire island, yeah. And we know almost everybody there, but not quite. We know, everybody's family names. I would wake up in the morning, walk outside in my shorts, and I could be barefooted and just walk down the village, right? And went to school with maybe 80 students in the entire high school that I went to. My favorite place to study was up on a coconut tree, so you would climb up and where the palm leaves, branch out, you make a nest for yourself and then study there. And I grew up spearfishing and, the whole island stuff. I will tell you though, if you see anything like on the Survivor shows and that portrays the islands, it's all false. I will tell you from firsthand experience, you cannot spear a fish standing outside of the water. That is impossible. So I just wanted to get the record straight. Okay, good. I moved from Micronesia to the heart of LA, Los Angeles. So you can imagine the culture shock that I went through. I didn't know what to say. I called my parents and said, I'm a grown man, but I'm scared. People are walking fast, talking fast. I thought I learned English. I thought I learned proper grammar, and here I am trying to figure out what people are saying, why they're saying stuff. And it was a traumatic experience. It was also funny. I had some, funny stories. I got onto a university campus, and there was a committee of students who, came out and met with me. I didn't expect this, right? So, it's a bunch of girls. They're coming at me. They're like, hey, and in my culture, I'm like, okay, what's going on? So they came at me and said, hey, we're gonna welcome you to the campus, let's do a tour. And they said, maybe tonight we can have dinner, right? So I'm thinking, gosh, I'm being invited to dinner with these gals, And I'm a single young man, and I'm thinking, oh, I must be that cool, Little did I know it was their job. So before dinner time, I was already dressed up in my, the best attire I can find, and put on a lot of cologne, and I was ready. So I'm like, hey, I love America. Girls approach me. In our culture, we don't do that, right? You got to do it secretly. It's all this whole thing. So we went to dinner. It was a Thai restaurant, and they told me, hey, just order whatever. So I'm just ordering, right? Whatever you want to eat. So I'm ordering this new food, and I'm eating it, and I'm just enjoying. I'm having a blast. I'm like, yeah, Lord, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I'm eating, and we're having a good time. We're talking. I'm trying to impress them with all my, spearfishing stories and all that stuff. A little exaggeration here and there. But then, towards the end of the meal, they all are, pulling out their wallets. And I'm like looking around and saying, okay, what's going on? Every single one of them is pulling out their wallets. I didn't know that I had to pay for my own food, right? And so the food wasn't that spicy, but I started sweating. I was sweating. My heart was beating faster. I'm just like, and I'm praying inside, Hail Mary, Our Father, whatever. I'm praying. Lord, save me. I need a miracle right now. So I pretend that I'm reaching into my pocket. I get my wallet out. I knew there was nothing in my wallet. I had nothing. But I was just like pretending, okay, so what do I say? Do I say, oh, shoot, I forgot. Like, I'm trying to go through all that scenario, right? So I reach for my wallet, I pull it out, and as I'm praying, I reach inside, and I feel this plastic type like card. And I pull it out. It's my uncle's credit card. And I'm like, whoa. My uncle told me, use it in emergency only. And I said, Lord, this is an emergency. So I swiped that card, I swiped it again. I'm like, yeah. But I left that awkward moment also feeling sad. Sad that I had to go through that experience. But I wonder how many people go through that experience. In our culture, if you're invited to a meal, you don't pay for anything. You're invited, that means you're the guest. So the host will pay for the food or provide for the food. And these are things people knew, I didn't know. I got off a night class one night, and I was going down the street, and it was in the middle of the night. Then I had the cops follow me, and they pulled me over. And so in the islands, if you're pulled over by the cops, this is how it is. You're pulled over, roll down the window, or you open your car door. You get out and say, "Hey, what's happening, officer so-and-so? Did you catch any fish last night?" Or, that's how it is. And they say, "Yeah, and, you were kind of speeding there, so I'll give you a ticket." Here, it was different. I didn't know what I was doing, why I was stopped. I wasn't speeding or anything. And then they told me, you were driving too slow. Like, okay, so I drive fast, you stop me. I drive slow, you stop me again. And so what do I do? The officer held me at gunpoint. I have never, ever seen a gun in my entire life. And here I am, staring down the barrel of a huge gun, with a huge man, for I don't know for what reason at all. And that pain has been with me until today. There are a lot of painful experiences for a lot of people around. You will not know their pains unless they tell you their stories. A lot of people from my community have those kinds of pains. Anyways, that's some kind of the long introduction for how I got to the Americas. So this is kind of a map of where Micronesia is. If you can see, here's Samoa. Most people know where that is, so I'm using that as a reference. This is Polynesia, Hawaii up there, and then you go all the way up to here, and that's Micronesia. Right? So there are different island groups within Micronesia. Micronesia is a region, obviously. Also, the name Micronesia, we don't call ourselves Micronesians. That was a Western term given to us to describe the small islands. So they're micro. To the world, we call ourselves Meganesians because we think we're... we own the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean in the world. I come from Chuk. You can only see Chuk like that. People ask me, where's Micronesia? I just say, it's in the Pacific. You just look at a dot, and that's Chuk, right there. So this is zooming in on the Micronesian region. Then you have Palau to the far west. Palau was on, was that the Survivor show? And then Yap and Chuk, Pohnpei, and Pushai. Those are the four island groups with four different languages, different cultures who make up the Federated States of Micronesia. Then you have to the far east is the Marshall Islands. It's a whole other group of islands, different culture, different language. And then to the north you have Guam, which is a U.S. territory. And then the Northern Marianas, which has Saipan. So people born in that region, they're U.S. citizens, except they don't vote. They can't vote. So that is Micronesia. So our story really begins in the textbooks. It begins with the colonial history. So I will talk a little bit about colonialism. That is our legacy. Spain first came to the islands. There were missionaries, there were traders, there were also just beachcombers and whalers, people who happened to be on the islands by accident. So this is how Spain took control of the islands in Micronesia. Literally, this is what happened. They got off the ship, they walked onto the beach, and then they took their Spain flag and put it down and said, "This is Spain's." So then we were under Spain. After Spain, Germany said, "Hey, we like those islands. Let's do a deal." So then Germany purchased the islands from Spain. Talk about entrepreneurs, right? You just come in, take it with no cost, and then you sell it. So they sold it to Germany, and Germany took over control of the islands. And then after World War I, the League of Nations then gave Japan, entrusted the islands to Japan, and they were supposed to take care of the islands, right? The mandate was for them to develop the islands, to take care of the islands, make sure that no other colonizers came and messed, with these people. So you can have administration over the islands. Well, you know what happened, and then World War II happened. The islands were fortified actually by Japanese, so much so that it was Chu was actually the largest naval base for Japan's military back then outside of Japan. They had their warships and battleships right in Micronesia. Also, you may not know this, the plane that dropped the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki flew from, guess where? Micronesia, right? So in our history, we've always been a strategic military location for world powers, not just the US, but for world powers. And I will argue until today, because we are smack dab in the middle of Asia, right, and Hawaii and the US. And we're also above Australia, but everybody loves the Australians, right? But we're very close to them as well. So then the United States, after World War II, they were then the ones who were entrusted with the islands. So they came in, we were first under the US Navy. So a branch of the military were the administrators of the islands. After that, we were transferred to the Department of Interior. So then the Department of Interior had administration over the islands. And back then, we were known as the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, or TTPI. So what did they do? They came in and they grouped together Palau, Chu, Pohnpei, Yakushaya, the Marshall Islands, and Northern Marianas together as one entrusted area under the US government, right? That's TTPI. And that was since the 1950s all the way up till 1985. What happened in the 1950s? This is one of the main things that happened in the 1950s. They used the Marshall Islands for nuclear bomb testing. So, well, after the wars, they said, okay, we're gonna have to, beef up military and then do our military exercises in the islands, since there are only a few of them, right? And they're just little islands. Not too many people care or know about these islands. Even though there were people there. They tested 67 nuclear bombs there in the 1950s. That's equivalent to 7,000 times the force of the Hiroshima bomb. Now, the Hiroshima bomb was devastating, right? You can't explain just the horror and what happened because of that one bomb. Now, multiply that by 7,000 times. That's what happened in the Marshall Islands. There are islands there that were homelands, indigenous lands, blown out and erased from the face of the earth. Some islands today are still uninhabitable. They will be uninhabitable for another 25,000 years. the fallout from those tests is just, I can't even describe it. Usually I have words to describe things. This, nothing. I can't say anything. But I will show a little video to say some of those words. So if we can play the video. So that's the story of the Marshall Islands. It kind of just gives you a picture of what was happening in the Marshall Islands, really in the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. Now, prior to that, there had been visitors who came to the islands, and it is documented that a lot of these, diseases like measles and gonorrhea and syphilis and tuberculosis were brought in when the ships came to the islands. And so for a long time, they were just all known as disease of the ships. That's what they called them. During this time also, there was a lot of changes in lifestyle, in people's subsistence living. They were now depending on products and goods that were coming in from the United States. So there were food programs where they sent in food like canned goods, so that during this period, islanders started to prefer, until today, canned meat over, what's locally grown, or these processed foods. So, has anybody ever heard of Spam? Heard of Spam? Yeah. It's quite good, actually, right? Even McDonald's in Hawaii, they serve Spam and rice. But people prefer that. A common scene is islanders, the men would go out and fish, probably fish for, the whole night. They come in the morning, they come to the main island, they sell the fish, get the money, they go to the grocery store, and guess what they buy? They buy Spam and corned beef and, all this other stuff. Canned spaghetti. And I thought, growing up, I thought, well, if I go to the U.S., this is going to be all canned food paradise for me. That's what I'm going to do. Just go and eat canned food. But we thought, and a lot of people still think, that the canned food is actually better food. Why? Because it comes from the West. Where, that's how horrible it was and is. I like to emphasize is, because a lot of the effects still continue until today. So today, what was Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands? They said, we're going to decolonize. So they said, we'll give them their sovereignty. So Guam obviously was already a territory of the U.S. CNMI, Northern Mariana Islands, decided that they would be a commonwealth of the United States. And then 4 of the remaining islands said, okay, we're going to be united together as a team. And in 1986, they became the Federated States of Micronesia, right? And then the Republic of Palau, its own nation, and Republic of the Marshall Islands. But what's interesting is all these 3 nations together signed a treaty, a compact with the United States called the Compact of Free Association. So you'll hear the word COFA a lot. It refers to islanders who come from these countries right here. Now what does the compact do? Though it gives them their independence, it has them intimately tied with the United States. So what are the provisions? The United States has full military power over the entire region, which is about 1 million square miles of water. And they have access to, you know, the airspace, everything, the land. And how much time do I have left?
You have until, give the agenda.
11:20.
11:20.
Okay, okay, we're still good. Okay, so the United States has all that power over the islands, and in the document it says in perpetuity. Now, that's a fancy way of saying forever, right? So it also has denial rights. Now, denial rights means if there is ever any other country that wants to deal with us, or, you know, have their military, whatever, pass through or whatever, the United States can say, no, you can't do that, because we have denial rights in these islands. And I guess that is because, you know, we don't want to repeat World War II and World War I. We want to, you know, have control over these islands, take care of these islands. So now we have that. That's the same thing I said. So, what are other provisions? There's economic help from the United States. It gives financial assistance to the islands. It also allows for citizens from those 3 countries to be able to travel to the United States and its territories without the need for a visa, right? So we just bring our passports to the border, and they let us come in. They just give us a tag, an I-94 form, and that form does not expire. So you'll have people who can come and live and work freely for as long as they want. And vice versa. So, you know, U.S. citizens can also go to the islands. But those are the provisions of the compact. It's also very important to know that the compact, unlike other international treaties, this is also written into the United States public law. So it is enforceable by law. So I talked a little bit about the changes in Micronesia, cultural changes, economic, health changes, social changes, religious. The country is all, you know, Christian. Most of it is, about 90%. And then the lifestyle and diet I've already discussed with you. It is kind of ironic, you know, to be in the islands and really want, you know, foods from here, and then I travel here, and now I'm living, and I'm here, and I'm like, I want Micronesian food, and I can't get it. It's so expensive to get it. It's not accessible. But then a lot of it also is being deteriorated today. And guess why? Any guesses? Climate change, right? So rising sea levels causing floods and erosion. There are places where people used to live, where I used to, you know, hang out. It's now underwater. The salinity of the water is changing, its temperature, so fish are dying off. So places where we can go out and spend like an hour fishing, we get, you know, enough for the day. Now people have to go and do that amount of fish by fishing the whole night. So it is becoming very unsustainable. So that's one of the reasons why people are now out migrating. You know, they're migrating because also the healthcare system there cannot respond to the health conditions that have been exacerbated by all the changes and everything going on. So then people have to leave the islands to seek health care. And for a Micronesian, just to be able to go into the emergency room is far, far better than to receive any type of care in Micronesia. So, how is life for Micronesians here in the US? People are moving out to Guam, Hawaii, Oregon, Kansas City, I don't know why, Springdale, Arkansas. I absolutely don't know why. But Oregon, you know, is the largest concentration of Kofa Islanders on the US mainland. It is estimated that there are more than 10,000 Kofa Islanders in Oregon. You know, people move to Oregon for various reasons. I think maybe they like the beer here and the coffee. But there was a program that sent out students during the TTPI, the Trust Territory time, where they were out to, they sent them and said, go and get an education in the land of Rewan and come back and, you know, work the government jobs here. So they'd send them out to these obscure little colleges. One of them was, in those days, in the 70s, was Chemeketa Community College, right? Where's that? It's in Salem, right? Or, you know, Susanville, California, the community college down there. Who knows where Susanville is? Yeah, I'm surprised. And then, you know, these little Park College in Kansas City, right? Kansas, Missouri. So they went out there, and then when our status changed from the Trust Territory to the COFA, then our visa statuses allowed us to stay and work, and that's why people, when they started leaving the islands, they say, where are their students? And some of them were here in Oregon, so they moved up to Oregon. So that's how it all started. Now, in 1996, you know what happened in 96, right? Clinton was in office, and then there was a Welfare Reform Act, right? Personal Work Opportunity and Responsibility Act. What that act did for Kofa Islanders specifically is it categorically made them categorically ineligible for Medicaid and almost all federal safety net programs. So we're allowed to come freely, but we are barred from any type of social services, right? Medicaid, food stamps, TANF, SSI benefits, even federal student loans, right? And I mean, these are people who pay into the tax system, but they cannot, you know, benefit from that system. So that's why it's been really difficult for people to get by, to be able to make, you know, better of themselves. They come here for good reasons. They want to have an education for their kids. Many people, you will ask them, why are you here? Why don't you go back? Oh, I so want to go back, but I want my kids to go to school. That is the common reason why people are here. There are job opportunities here. Back home, there's not too many jobs. The government is the largest employer there for healthcare, to seek a better life, and obviously because they are climate refugees. So that's kind of a little fast crash course on Micronesian history and the history of migration from the islands to Oregon specifically. But what are the islanders doing now? You will ask. They're working, you know, jobs. They're taking care of their families. They are in Vancouver, Washington, all the way down to the Salem area, and some are in Eugene as well. There's a group of Micronesians also in Medford about 20, 30 or so. And then there's a large group of them out in La Grande. Any guesses why La Grande? What's in La Grande? Eastern Oregon University, right? So there were students there as well when it was Eastern, College of Education or something. So there's a group there as well, and most of the Coast Islanders are here in the Portland metro area, specifically Multnomah County, but there are a few still in the different counties around the state, but concentrated in Multnomah, Washington, Marion, yeah, I think that, and then Clark County, Washington. The Islanders are resilient, I will tell you. They've been able to organize themselves. They created the COFA Alliance National Network, which came to the legislature, spent 5 years advocating, and then finally they passed in 2016 the COFA Premium Assistance Program. So people can now receive health care by signing up onto the marketplace, because that's one of the few things that they do qualify for, thank goodness, for the tax credits through the marketplace. So they take advantage of that, and then what's left for them to pay, the COFA Premium Assistance Program, which is a Oregon state-based program, pays for the rest of that, right? So people can receive free health care if they are from the COFA. And then this year, a similar program was passed in Washington State. So they will start enrolling folks in November, and it will become effective January 1st of 2019. So this is really the community. They came together, formed an organization called COFA Alliance National Network, and they are doing this work, trying to get health care for Pacific Islanders. So there has been some success to curb that great injustice. And people have asked me, what do you think about this thing? You guys now are, doing great work here. And aren't you happy now that, and I was interviewed on a radio show, and they asked me, you're happy now, right? Because you just passed this legislation. And I told the guy, I said, yeah, I am happy. I'm happy that, there is a program where people can access health care. But I told them, but let me tell you what I'm most happy about. I'm most happy because at least for the first time in almost a century, well over a century, we were kind of heard. Just to be heard. You have to really take that in and understand what it means to just be heard. If you have all this history behind you, right, you wouldn't necessarily know what people have gone through unless you listen to their stories. A lot of the people who will show up, in the clinics and in the offices will be carrying a lot of this story that not too many people have heard. So people ask me, so what do you want me to do as a provider to be able to help these people? I say it would be really good if you kind of let them talk. Let them speak for themselves. And don't be offended if they don't talk to you or they don't look you in the eye. You don't make eye contact. I'm trying to not look at you. No, I've gotten better. But people won't look at you because it's offensive to look people in the eye. Or when they apologize, right? An older gentleman from our community was arrested because the grandkids called the cops as a prank, and the cops came out, and then the first thing that this older gentleman said was, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry." Now, the apology is a way of showing respect and reverence to authority. But it was taken as an admission of guilt, right? So he's apologizing, he's got to be guilty, lock him up. So slow down, listen to people. There will be people who will talk to you, but they will tell you what they think you want to hear, not really what the story is. These are also mobile people, people who are used to moving around. It's not because they can't take care of themselves. They're moving around because we've been mobile people since before the colonizers came. We like to travel. So a permanent address, if you're looking for that, that's gonna, good luck on that. But it just shows you that the community is looking for one another. A brother will look for a sister, or will look for a grandparent, or will look for, and they will actually move the family and go and stay with them and live with them. And then they will move around. So that's kind of where people are coming from, right? And it just takes, some listening to be able to serve them and serve their needs. Yes.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I don't mean to interrupt. So we're trying to talk to a family, because they're exposed to TV.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be the best person to talk to in the family? Is it more like towards the mom, the grandparents, where we could be more, not that we want to know exactly their business, but just for our purposes as the health department, who would be the best person to talk where we could get more information to better do our job?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm making kind of sense.
No, I think I get it. It really just depends, honestly. You would ask them, and you may ask a question like 5 times, 10 times, before you really get to the answer, right? And this is just because people already have a barrier up with you, even before their approach, they already have a barrier. And it really takes time to really get to the answer we're looking for. But it depends, it really depends. An effective way is really to talk to some of their church leaders. That has, proven to be a good strategy, where then the church person, because they're trusted in the community, they're a spiritual leader, then they can, be kind of a liaison and talk to the family for you. But really it's just asking who would be the best person. Because sometimes that person who is traditionally the person to speak for the family is not present. They're not, here, probably still back home. And they carry a lot of weight. You can't get married here, right, in the Micronesian community, if you don't ask that key person who may be thousands of miles out in Micronesia on an island with no telephone or whatever. And it's kind of like tough luck on the guy, right? Because he has to find a way to talk to that person. Yes, there are key people, but here I think it's just asking who that person would be.
Hi, Glenn Christie from CDC. I have a question about the compact, but I also wanted to just briefly share a story. I had the pleasure of visiting a TV program here, Shoot, about 2 years ago. And I want to echo what you said about the warmth and resiliency of folks there. At the time I visited, the outreach staff of the TV program, they treat for both leprosy and TB here. And so these folks who were going out into literally the jungle to go to the DOT, and I had a chance to go out with them. And a lot of the travel was by foot. And many of these folks, at the time I went, they hadn't received a paycheck for over 6 months because of some issues going on. But they showed up every day. And wanting to tell their story as to why they were so committed was really impressive. And the sense of community there, they paid their bills by IOU, basically, because that's just the community awareness they had. So I was overwhelmed, to be honest, with what they were dealing with, just the resiliency. But I wanted to ask you a question about the compact. So when is it up for renewal? And do you know, can you talk a little bit about that process as far as the development of the compact?
Right. Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, the compact is up for renewal in 2023. So 2023 is the cutoff date, and specifically it's for the financial provisions of the compact. The rest of it is, they're not discussing that unless either side wants to bring something up. So it will be a time to come to the table after 23, where both the U.S. and Micronesia can try to have a conversation on what needs to be changed or updated or things like that, which I feel like there's a whole lot that needs to be changed. But Hi.
Hi. So back to your very first slide, which was the map that showed Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia. Is that the colonial
Yes, grouping.
map, or are there natural sort of cultural ties within that group?
The first slide, that is the colonial grouping of the islands. Culturally, the islands of Polynesia are our brothers and sisters. There are so many similarities within our cultures. And then there are traditional oral history that shows that a lot of the people have moved around. So we're kind of cousins, related, even though today a lot of us are grouped together by language, but those languages also are pretty similar. So,
We actually scheduled 10 minutes between presenters, so I think we still have time for a few more questions if you wanted to add a couple more comments. Any other questions? So I do have a question.
Sure.
So in your current role as Consul General, is there anything particular you can do for people from Micronesia if there's trouble or people need help?
Yeah, thank you. Well, there's the basic consular services, which is helping people renew their passports, make sure they have their I-94s. People still run into a lot of problems even with these documents. Because like I asked for a show of hands, who knows, Micronesia and COVID, whatever, right? Not too many people do. So it might be in the memo that, yes, this person qualifies to get a social security card or a driver's license or things like that. People don't read the memos, right? So at the agency level where the actual service worker is working, all of this stuff means nothing to them. So what happens? They say, okay, we got to check with immigration office, the federal, immigration office. It takes months, 6 months to get a social security card. So how are you going to get a job? How are you going to, apply for an apartment? So there is still a lot more to be done, such as educating people and saying, hey, we're here, right? We're from these islands. There's a compact. And many people don't even, they say, oh, what's a compact? I don't know what that is. So that's what people have to face, every day. So my job is to try to kind of mediate, and be a liaison between, the local governments and our people. There are also some policy work that we're doing And this I'm working in conjunction with our embassy in Washington, D.C. and other consulates around the country, working with certain states or federal agencies because they all talk to each other, right? They're all on the same page, right? No, they're not. So, so it makes it very difficult for me, even, and then for everybody else. It's just you don't know how to navigate the system. So that's kind of the work I do.
Any other?
I try to stay away from generalizations as much as possible, but you were mentioning some cultural things such as eye contact and things like that. Is there any other advice you can give to us as healthcare workers?
Yeah.
Little tidbits that might be helpful when we're trying to build relationships with your community?
I get asked that question a lot. Yeah. And it's a good.
It's hard to generalize.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good question, but I often think and I've before this I used to do a lot of like equity and diversity training and inclusion trainings, and I've also kind of grown to be a little I don't know, cynical of like these techniques and methods that people rely on because as a human being we're so there's a lot of gray area, right? It's just unpredictable. I think really the rule of thumb is to just treat the other person as kindly as you want to be treated, and if they're not, I think the thing is, try not to have assumptions when they don't look at you or when they're not on time or when there's a pause. There's always an awkward pause, I will tell you, with Micronesians. You'll ask them, and they know exactly what you're asking. They know their name, right? You ask them their name, and there's a pause. That pause, let me tell you, is actually them trying to get muster up the courage, and they want to be proper, they want to be appropriate, and then make sure that it's the right thing to say, and then they say it. So some patience is probably good. And try to get information from them at a first meeting. It's just, it's going to be hard. But really just, treating them kindly, trying to talk story with them. They say talk story is good. You'll probably need a good 15 minutes, maybe, to just talk story, unrelated to the issue. Just that will break down the barriers. But then, that 15 minutes is a good investment because it will help, benefit your whole session with them.
I am originally from Hawaii.
Yeah.
Food is big.
Oh, yes,
culture.
yes.
So I wasn't sure if there's like any.
Oh, we love food.
Okay.
But you don't have, well, you have some food here, so, yeah.
So bring Spam. Spam, eggs, and rice.
Anything
and
goes,
breakfast.
anything goes, yeah.